On August 20th, 1966, a young boy called Jorge da Costa Alves was playing on Vindem Hill in Niterói, just outside of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. While flying his kite, Jorge stumbled upon a gruesome discovery: the bodies of two men lying side by side on the hill. They were wearing matching suits and raincoats, and on their faces lay two homemade masks, carved from lead into the shape of sunglasses and resting over the eyes of the dead men. Tough terrain prevented police from investigating the scene until the following day, but when they finally arrived and set to work with their investigation, they found a note lying beside the bodies. Translated from Portuguese, the note reads, 4:30, be at the determined place. 6:30, swallow capsules. After effect, protect metals. Wait for mask sign. Also in their possession was an empty water bottle, with its receipt, 2 towels, and a small amount of cash. The men were identified as Miguel Jose Viana, 34, and Manuel Pereira de Cruz, 32, two electronic technicians. As their last steps were traced, investigators learned that the two men arrived in Niterói by bus on August 17th, 1966. In a local store, they purchased their 2 raincoats, and in a local bar, they purchased a single bottle of water, saving the receipts in order to return their empty bottle later and collect their deposit back. 2 witnesses report that the men looked nervous during these transactions, frequently checking their watch as though they were running late for something. And, despite the implications created by the note, swallow capsules, the coroner's report showed no poison in their systems, and their official cause of death was given as cardiac arrest, and nothing more than that. 2 men in their 30s just sat down and simultaneously died of natural causes. Seems likely. That, astoundingly, is it. If you enjoyed this episode, you can hear more on our website, which is... Okay, no, I'm kidding. I debated including this mystery at all, because it's so short and there is so little information. But it's quite a popular case, and the lack of info is really what makes it so interesting. I'm really interested to hear what you guys think about this, so be sure to head to daffodillies.co.uk/zoinks and let us know what you think in the comments. There are 2 main categories that theories fall into with this mystery. The first is aliens, because of course it is. I mean, a hill in the middle of nowhere, bright light or radiation, the bodies lying side by side after an apparently peaceful death. The whole thing screams abduction or contact of some kind with some extraterrestrial entity. Because the behaviour of the 2 men in the hours leading up to their deaths implies a clear intent, it's generally thought that they were actively trying to contact aliens in some way, and that they succeeded, with said contact somehow bringing about their demise. Beyond that, there's not much else we can fill in. The time between UFO touchdown and the victims' deaths remains a void in our knowledge. The second theory places the men at the mercy of an intense belief in aliens, or New Age beliefs of some kind, or that they were members of some kind of cult. The idea is that, despite alien visitations being nothing but unproven stories, the 2 victims were convinced that they were true and wanted to get in contact with some kind of alien or godlike creature. Then, through unknown events, they end up dead. You'll notice that our 2 different theories here are not really different theories at all. They're just the same theory repackaged, depending on whether you fall into the camp that aliens are real or not. Personally, I don't, and so I find the latter idea much more believable. But does either theory hold up? Well, first of all, there's a few things I think are worth noting in this case. Firstly, if you read about this case online, you will inevitably read about the butchered grammar of the note found by the bodies. Every source I've seen has mentioned this, clarifying that the grammar doesn't make sense in Portuguese either, and that it's not the result of poor translation. This doesn't really have any bearing on the case, but it does give off a vibe. Specifically, a vibe that these men were not in their right minds. Maybe that's just me looking too deep into this, but the idea that they wrote this borderline incoherent note with their last hours on Earth conjures up an image of two men, potentially manic, who are detached somewhat from reality and not able to string a sentence together properly. And I think that this is therefore used as a contributing piece of evidence to the theory that they were trying to make contact with some mythical creature. However, I don't know if this is just me, but the grammar in the note seems fine. I mean, let's reread. 4:30, be at the determined place. 6:30, swallow capsules. After effect, protect metals. Wait for mask sign. I'll grant you it's no Pulitzer winner and the grammar is certainly disjointed, but we have to look at the context. These aren't sentences. Not full sentences anyway. This is a schedule, a list. You don't write your shopping list in full, grammatically correct sentences, do you? If I was writing instructions to myself, for example, I might write 2:30, turkey in oven. 3:30, after peeling, boiled potatoes, check vegetables. Does this really sound any different to the note that they found in the lead mask case? I don't think so. And I've probably already spent far too much time on this minor piece of evidence, but I just wanted to point out that the grammar of the note isn't really of note in this case. So moving on, the second thing I want to talk about is the masks themselves. You'll often see these referred to online as some sort of radiation mask, or masks to guard against some bright light of some kind. But those conclusions don't really make sense. Eyewear to protect from bright light, for example, still needs to be at least somewhat translucent. The entire point is to allow you to see something without dangerous levels of light. Lead won't let anything through, so these masks can't be used to protect from bright light, at least not if you still want to see anything, and if you don't, why not just turn away? As for radiation, that makes a little more sense, as lead eyewear would certainly protect your eyes from radiation at least a little, but why, in that case, would only the eyes need protection? If the radiation is strong enough to pass through your body and damage organs without the protection of lead, wouldn't there be a desperate need to protect other parts of the body too? But here these men are, exposing themselves to potentially dangerous levels of radiation, and protecting only their eyes. It doesn't add up, and unfortunately, I'm not sure there's an answer to the question. The final thing I would like to note is that the information in this case, all of the information, is not particularly verifiable, and it's not necessarily reliable. Even the rare bits of info that we do know, we don't know for certain. For example, some sources say that the amount of money found implied that the men had spent a large amount of money. Other sources don't mention this. Some say that the masks were found on their eyes, others say they were found beside their bodies. Most sources agree in their descriptions of the bodies, that they were lying on a hill in a somewhat peaceful position, side by side. But even that could be hearsay, and there's no way to verify where the bodies died, how they were found, or what the weather conditions were like that day. Additionally, I have to question one of the more concrete facts in this case, the coroner's report. Sources seem to suggest that the coroner's report showed no trace of drugs in their systems, and that the deaths were put down to unexplained heart failure. I have to question the veracity of this. I've seen no documentation to back up any of these claims. I haven't seen the coroner's report with my own eyes, and there are just too many questions. What was post-mortem investigation like in Brazil in 1966? Was it thorough? Were toxicology reports standard and likely to have been done? What did the analysis of heart tissue show? How long had the men been dead? What was the process of archiving information in 1966 Brazil, and how have their systems changed since? Where would these files be now? And have any people reporting on this ever seen them? To be totally honest, my confidence in the medical findings being accurate is so low that I almost want to exclude it as evidence entirely. So, since I'm dumping all my opinions on you anyway, what do I think happened? Well, let's look at the evidence and see what we can confirm for certain. I'll exclude the medical information for reasons I've stated, and I also have to leave out the eyewitness accounts as they reek of leading questions to me. So, 2 men arrive in Niterói by bus on August 17th. They purchased raincoats and a single bottle of water, which they intended to return later. They travelled to Vintem Hill, where they intended to do something involving lead masks. As a result, they died. Their final actions, in their own words: swallow capsules, after effect, protect metals, wait for mask sign. I think buying nothing but a single bottle of water suggests that this description of events is accurate, and the men needed a drink to swallow their pills with. Their intention to return the bottle, I believe, is genuine, as their note implies that they expect to be unharmed by the mystery drug, and that they will feel its effects before moving on to the next steps of the plan. It seems to me that whatever they ingested, they intended to survive it. Next, protect metals. We don't really know what this means. It would seem to refer to the masks, as there were no other metals present. It sounds as though it's a verb, but I wonder if this is a problem with translation, or a case of meaning changing through tellings like a game of telephone. Is protect, I wonder, being used as a noun? Protection metals, or protective metals. Finally, wait for mask sign. That, unfortunately, I have no idea about. It's far too vague and could refer to anything, from aliens to natural phenomena. I do wonder, though, if it's referring to some kind of weather phenomenon that the men might have been chasing, as their purchase of raincoats would imply that they were expecting some extreme weather that evening. But either way, that's the chain of events as certain as we can be. These men bought raincoats and water, travelled to Vintem Hill, ingested a substance, prepared to use their masks, and awaited some sort of sign. So does this fit the usual theories? Kind of. The events do seem to imply some sort of natural event is going to happen, and the strange behaviour and drug consumption does imply some sort of spiritual connection. There is also mild evidence to back this theory up in the form of Hermes Louis Fitosa, a man who died in similar circumstances 4 years earlier in 1962. He was found with a similar, handcrafted lead mask over his eyes, dead, with no apparent cause of death and no toxicology findings. This would seem to corroborate the idea that this case has something to do with some kind of cult belief. However, if you thought the lead mask case was lacking in verifiable details, the case of Fitosa is even flimsier. There is nothing to back up the condition of his body, or the findings of the autopsy, if one was even performed. There is no clear answer on where this happened. Some say it was on the same hill, some say a different hill. There's not even any date for his death, just an incredibly vague 1962. Without some actual documentation, I just don't think this evidence is even worth considering, unfortunately. Which leaves us with basically no idea what happened at Vintem Hill in 1966. And it seems unlikely that any new evidence is going to come to light at this point, and speculation is all that we have. So, with that in mind, what do you think? You just heard an excerpt from the Zoinks podcast. Search for Zoinks on your favourite podcast app to hear it in full, or subscribe here on YouTube for highlights and bonus videos. And remember to tap the bell to make sure you don't miss anything. You can also find a bunch of extra content on our website, daffodillies.co.uk/zoinks.